In 2011, the state of Texas finished spending $2.8 billion widening a single highway in Houston until it hit 26 lanes at its widest point, officially the widest freeway on the planet. The goal was simple: more lanes, less traffic. Within 3 years, the morning commute on that stretch of road was 30% longer than before the widening even started. Not despite spending billions of dollars to fix it. Because of it. Picture standing at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for that project. Local officials, a wide, new ribbon of fresh asphalt stretching to the horizon. A genuine sense that a real problem had just been solved with real money and real engineering. Nobody in that photo was lying, and nobody was incompetent. They were following an intuition that feels so obviously correct, it barely seems worth questioning. If there's too much traffic for the road, build a bigger road. It's the same logic behind widening a doorway that people keep bumping into, or adding a second cash register when the line gets too long. Except with highways, that intuition turns out to be almost exactly backwards. Beat. Here's the important part. This isn't a story about one badly designed highway. It's a pattern that shows up almost everywhere engineers have tried the same fix for almost a century, and it comes down to a single, deeply counterintuitive idea. Building more road capacity doesn't relieve traffic. It creates more of it. Nobody set out to design a system that eats infinite pavement and gives nothing back. It happened by accident, one reasonable-sounding highway expansion at a time, and once you understand the mechanism, you'll never look at a construction crew widening a freeway the same way again. Beat. The freeway that ate its own solution. That Houston highway is called the Katy Freeway. Built in the 1960s as a fairly ordinary 6-lane road, it slowly became one of the worst bottlenecks in the country, as the suburbs around it grew through the 80s and 90s. By 2004, it was ranked the second worst traffic choke point in the entire nation, wasting an estimated 25 million hours of commuter time every single year. The fix seemed obvious. Widen the road. Add lanes. Let more cars through at once. So Texas spent $2.8 billion turning it into a 26-lane mega highway. And when researchers pulled the actual traffic data a few years later, both the morning and afternoon commutes had gotten measurably worse, up to 30% longer in the morning, over 50% longer in the evening. The freeway had more physical capacity than almost any road on Earth, and driving on it took longer than before the project started. This isn't a one-off embarrassment. A nationwide study looking at nearly 100 major metro areas found that between 1993 and 2017, freeway capacity in those areas grew by 42% faster than the population did, and traffic delays still grew by 144% over the same period. In Houston specifically, freeway lanes expanded 28% and delays increased 221%. More lanes, worse traffic. Every time. There's a second layer to the Katy Freeway story that rarely makes it into the Highway Department's press releases. Widening, it meant demolishing hundreds of homes and businesses along the route, pushing the people who lived and worked there further from the city center. Which means the project didn't just fail to relieve congestion, it also manufactured brand new car trips by scattering people into exactly the kind of car-dependent sprawl that needs a highway to survive in the first place. And this wasn't a Texas-specific quirk. Researchers at UC Berkeley, looking at highway data across the country, found that for every 1% increase in freeway lane miles in a region, long-term traffic volume rose by roughly 0.9%, almost a one-to-one match, as if the road and the traffic filling it were locked together by an invisible spring. Beat. Why more road creates more driving? The mechanism behind this has a name, induced demand, and it's really just supply and demand. Applied somewhere, people don't usually think to apply it. When something gets cheaper, people use more of it, and a wider, faster highway makes driving cheaper in the currency that actually matters to a commuter: time. Before a highway gets widened, plenty of people have already quietly priced themselves out of using it. Someone who used to drive that route switched to public transit because the traffic got unbearable. Someone else moved to an apartment closer to work specifically to avoid that commute. Someone else started leaving an hour earlier or later just to dodge the worst of it. Someone else stopped making a discretionary trip across town altogether because it just wasn't worth the hassle. All of those people represent demand that was being actively suppressed by how bad the road already was. Then the road gets wider, and for a few months it actually does feel faster. And that's exactly when all those suppressed trips come back. The person who switched to the bus starts driving again because now it's quicker. The person who left an hour early stops bothering. The person who moved closer to work doesn't move back, but the next family looking for housing decides they can afford to live a little farther out now, since the commute got easier, which adds a brand new trip to the road that didn't exist before at all. Economists studying this call it the triple convergence. Drivers converge back onto the widened road from other routes, other times of day, and other modes of transportation all at once, until the road fills right back up to the same miserable equilibrium it started at, just with more total cars using it than before. Beat. The part that sounds fake but isn't. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Researchers studying road networks have documented something called Brace's paradox. In certain traffic networks, adding a new road or a new lane can make the overall travel time for everyone worse. Not just fail to help, but actively make the system slower than if the new capacity had never been built at all. And the reverse holds too. Several major cities have closed or removed large highways expecting traffic chaos, and instead watched congestion barely change or even improve. San Francisco's Embarcadero Freeway collapsed in the 1989 earthquake and was never rebuilt, replaced with a surface boulevard instead. Traffic engineers braced for gridlock. It didn't come. The waterfront it used to shadow became one of the most valuable, walkable stretches of the city instead. Seoul tore down an entire elevated highway running through its downtown and replaced it with a river and public park. Again, the traffic apocalypse everyone predicted never really showed up. Drivers didn't multiply to fill a hole the way they multiply to fill a widened lane. They simply adapted, rerouted, shifted their timing, or stopped making trips that weren't essential in the first place. The same flexible, adaptive behavior that makes induced demand ruin highway widenings works in reverse when you take capacity away instead of adding it. Beat. Why this keeps happening anyway. Given how consistent this pattern is, economists Gilles Duranton and Matthew Turner studied it so extensively, they started calling it the fundamental law of road congestion. You'd expect governments to have stopped widening highways to fight congestion decades ago. Mostly they haven't. Between 1993 and 2017 alone, U.S. states spent more than $500 billion on highway capacity projects in major metro areas, chasing the same fix that keeps failing the same way, in city after city, on a nationwide scale. Part of the reason is that the short-term picture genuinely does look like a win. For the first several months after a widening opens, travel times really do drop. Ribbon cuttings happen. Officials get to point at real, measurable improvement. It's only years later, once all that suppressed demand has fully rushed back in, that the congestion creeps back to where it started. Or worse, by which point the officials who approve the project have often moved on, and the connection between We widened this road in 2011, and this road is somehow just as bad in 2016 doesn't get drawn by most of the people stuck in it every morning. There's also a structural reason baked into how transportation funding works. Agencies are largely funded and evaluated based on how much new capacity they build, not on how much actual travel time they save people. Building a new lane is a concrete, fundable, photograph-friendly outcome. Correctly predicting that the lane won't help, and therefore not building it, doesn't get anyone reelected or funded for the next fiscal year. Beat. The trap nobody can see from inside a traffic jam. Sit in gridlock on a highway. And the intuition is almost impossible to override. There are too many cars for the amount of road, so the obvious fix is more road. Everything about the traffic jam itself argues for more lanes. What the traffic jam can't show you is the invisible pool of trips that don't exist yet. The family that hasn't moved farther from downtown yet. The commuter who hasn't switched back from the bus yet. The errand nobody's bothered to make yet because the drive still isn't worth it. Widen the road, and that invisible pool doesn't stay invisible. It becomes the next traffic jam, dressed up as a brand new highway that was supposed to solve the old one. Nobody designed this on purpose. No planning commission sat down decades ago and decided the goal was an endless cycle of widening projects that never actually fix anything. It emerged gradually out of an intuition that felt obviously correct every single time it got applied. More lanes, less traffic, reinforced by short-term results that looked like proof, until the data caught up decades later and showed the same pattern replaying city after city, highway after highway, almost without exception. If a $2.8 billion freeway making your commute worse just broke your brain a little, send this to someone stuck in traffic right now. And subscribe. Every week, another system that quietly works against the exact thing it was built to fix.